PC Hunter once said that you can ignore every safe practice, but you can't ignore cybersecurity safe practices. Because if you ignore them, you are inviting a disaster for your organization. Good evening, everyone. I am Tushar Boija, team manager of Resethacker community. I welcome you all to our 3-day virtual event, which is RESTCON'20. We will have CTF competition, conferences and roundtable discussions, which will be held on Discord too. Okay, so moving on. We are non-profit crowdsourcing cybersecurity community with a lot of professionals who have certifications from CES to OSCP. So you can judge how well professional and how knowledgeable people we have in our team. We are organizing this 3-day virtual event, a part of which is a CTF competition, has been held yesterday. Today is day 1 of conferences section, and today we will be talking about bug hunting. There would be a lot of sessions about bug hunting, so you can see the schedule on your screen now. Okay, so you have seen the schedule. Moving on to our first guest speaker.
Hello and welcome to RESTCON by Resethacker. I am Priyanshu Ratnakar and today I will talk about my topic cybersecurity and the rise of startups. So here this is me Priyanshu Ratnakar. This is me here. I'm a cybersecurity practitioner. I'm also an entrepreneur, founder of a startup called Protocolax. We provide IT solution and services. You can find all the details on internet. So now without wasting any more time, let's begin to our today's session. So before we begin, I would like to mention a quote. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not to fear the results of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. And in the world of cyber, you neither know your enemy nor yourself. So before we start, let's understand the industries. Cybersecurity companies or IT security consulting firms manage IT security services such as firewalls, intrusion, prevention, security threat analysis, proactive security vulnerability, and pen testing and incident preparation and response, which includes IT forensics. In an increasingly digital world, it's no surprise that cybercrimes are on the rise. According to a recent research, the financial toll on businesses is also skyrocketing. A 2019 IBM report shows that the average data breach cost $3.92 million. Cybercrime has become a global epidemic. Attacks will cost the world around $6 trillion by 2021. Research firm Cybersecurity Ventures says the greatest transfer of economic wealth in history and more profitable than the trade in all major illegal drugs. These high financial stakes are driving big demand for cybersecurity services. Large companies have budget to hire cybersecurity staff, but small and mid-sized business typically cannot afford full-time cybersecurity employees. This is where cybersecurity expertise can turn into a successful security solution business. You can help protect these smaller companies from cyber risk, data breaches, cyber attacks, malware, phishing scams, and other digital threats. If you are thinking of starting a cybersecurity firm, so today I'm going to help you in this, but first you should follow these steps to lay the groundwork for a successful business. So now you have to decide what needs to concentrate on. Most cybersecurity companies tend to offer general services that are standard security services that a company is expected to offer. That is why it seems that there are no niche areas in these industries. But on the other hand, some cybersecurity companies may decide to major in But on the other hand, some cybersecurity companies may decide to major in areas such as providing cybersecurity compliance services, providing firewall management services, providing email and cloud services, providing IT protection consulting services, custom security software development, securing system design and integration, existing security system management. The level of competition in the industry, no matter the line of business you decide to pitch your tent, you're still going to compete with the others who are into the same line of business with the experience of years. And cybersecurity services business is not an exemption. The level of competition in the cybersecurity services industry depends largely on your area of specialization, like how big and organized your cybersecurity services company is. The truth is that no matter the level of competition in an industry, you have to done your due diligence and your brand and promote your products or services properly. You will always make headway in the industry. Just ensure you have what it takes to prefer the right solution to public and organizations, cybersecurity concerns, and you know how to reach out your target market. So now what happens during a typical day at internet security company? First of all, identify emerging threats on the internet and find weakness in operating system, apps, and networks. You have to find out the loopholes in the network, in the system. Second, develop new patches that can protect clients' data and system from an attack. You can get an example from a system update or antivirus update. So what these companies do, they release patches with the update. You have to install that update and it patches the loophole that previously that someone have reported or exploited it. Constantly expand knowledge of new devices, software, firmware, network architect, etc. You have to update yourself. Like you have to learn what new thing is coming in the market. You have to update yourself with all the new exploit, new vulnerabilities, new techniques, new scams, all the new things that have came in the market in recent days. Stay current with the latest programming language. You have to update yourself with the all latest programming languages that is coming in the market. Like in previous time we deal with C, C++, but now we have different languages like Dragon, Kotlin, and Swift. Point 5. Developing marketing campaigns to reach out new customers in the PC and corporate world. You have to run ads, you have to advertise yourself to reach out with the large audience. Conduct person to person sales of products and services to build a better personal relation with the clients. Next point, repair networks, servers, computers that you have come under attack. Provide 24 into 7 support for clients through the phone, online, and in person when needed. It makes the image of a company better. It shows that you are a sincere, you are punctual. Handle payroll, vendors, and maintain offices. Hire and develop new talents. Now, moving to the next slide, develop a business plan tailored to cybersecurity. Some business opt to become an authority for a certain field or industry. For example, do you want to target a specific industry such as finance or healthcare? Define your target market and analyze it. Early on, you need to choose the focus of your cybersecurity business. Some business opt to become an authority. Others choose to present themselves in a particular area for cybersecurity. They may want to be known of their deep knowledge of access control or network security regarding of industry. This decision should be based on your skill set, right? But also on the market analysis. If you know the competition, you can identify the potential opportunities. Who are your current competitors? You have to find out your competitors, like what they are doing, what the services they are providing, what are your competitors strength and weaknesses. You have to find out your competitors strength and weaknesses, like what they are mainly specific at, what the best services they are providing, and what services they are not providing that you can use to help yourself with. How are you different from the competition? You have to give better schemes, you have to provide better solutions, better services. How can you take market share from your away from your competitors? You have to build your brand, you have to promote your brand, you have to build a personal relation with the clients. How might competitors react when you enter the market? Of course, no one wants competitor of their in the market. So you have to make yourself ready to deal with your competitor. They will try to put you down, but you have to compete with them. Moving next, decide what needs to concentrate on. Most cybersecurity companies tend to offer general services that a standard cybersecurity company is expected to offer. That is why it seemed that there are no niche areas in the industries. But on the other hand, some cybersecurity companies may decide to major in the areas such as providing cybersecurity compliance services, cybersecurity firewall management services, providing email and cloud services, providing other IT protection services, custom software development, system designing and integration, existing security system management, and developing tools, which I will talk to later on. Next, choose your company's legal structure. The legal structure of a business is critical. It impacts everything from daily operations to taxes and financial risk. Here are the five most common company structures. First one is sole proprietorship. This is the simplest structure and the easiest to set up because there's virtually nothing to set up. It's business run by one person who reports company profit losses on an individual tax return. However, you can be held personally liable for the debt and obligation of businesses, as there's no legal difference between you and your business. Second one, partnership. This is the simplest structure of company owned by two or more people. Each person reports profit of personal tax returns. The most common type of partnerships are limited partners LP and limited liability partners LLP. Next one we are going to discuss is limited liability companies. Limited liabilities companies, LLC, and LLC is something of hybrid between a sole proprietorship and a partnership. It limits owner's liability and separates your personal assets from your business, but owners still report any income tax and expenses from the business on their personal income tax return. Next one is our S corporation. With S corp, you can pay yourself a salary and are responsible for all the payroll taxes. Any remaining profit can be distributed to the owner as distributions. The advantage is the lower tax rate on distribution, but this option include more cost, rules, and paperwork. And the last one, C corporation. Under this structure, the corporation is separate legal entity that can earn a profit, be taxed, and be held legally liable. It can have an unlimited number of shareholders with the limited liability of the company's debt, but they can be taxed on by earning. Before you choose a structure, it's wise to talk with business counselors, accountants, and or CA to figure out which arrangement is best for you. Find the right location. Beyond your ideal location, you should also take into account your startup of capital. If you need to hire and the nature of your startup business when deciding where to set up shop, your option include like Corona showed us that the work from home can be considered easily. So moving to our the first point is work from home. Working from home, small businesses owners who have go to this route have many advantages, like there's no lengthy compute or distractions of typical workplace. Plus, you get an improved work-life balance. But it can be lonely, and it requires self-discipline to stay on task, and that's the most important things that I will consider, the self-discipline to stay on the task. Moving to the next point, co-working spaces. This option offer flexibility along with the penalty of perks and amenities, as well as the company culture that you don't have been working from home. But the set hours, lack of privacy, and limited room to grow might not fit with your plans, but it's okay. The last one is leasing or buying office space. Having a commercial office space for your business offer taxes benefits and fixed cost of your businesses, but the upfront cost can be steep. This option also won't provide the same flexibility as home office or co-working space. If you do rent or lease a space, you will also need to purchase commercial property insurance. This policy is typically required in the rental agreement that it will protect your business's building like furniture, supplies, and all the other stuffs and equipment. Next, what will your client expect in the end? Peace of mind. You know, you can't provide guarantees, but this is what they will expect, that nothing will happen to their data. But unfortunately, you will have to explain to them that there are no guarantees. If you don't, something will get through and you will be blamed. Like, no matter how great security solutions are, sometimes they fail. What you can do is be honest and tell them if they want a higher level of security, they will have to pay for it. And they may not like this, but this is the truth. When it comes to cybersecurity, credibility is so important. Trust is also essential in the equation, but trust goes both ways. Make sure you offer security awareness trainings and education for your clients' employees. If they aren't trained to recognize phishing attempts and cybersecurity threats, all your efforts can be defeated. You can offer training and they don't accept it. You cannot be entirely at fault if they are pleased, but you have to provide your best services. You have to do your best. What about marketing a cybersecurity business? Stop selling and build relationships. Once you do, the sale will come. You can do this without spending money by using Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I know I have always told my MSP clients that they must think of themselves as a marketing company that specializes in tech. This is true, but today using media to market is so important that I am going to change. This is a media company that specializes in tech. Reach out and educate your prospects about cybersecurity with medias like videos, webinars, blogs, etc. Provide them easy to use cybersecurity tips to promote your services. This will help you understand out from other MSPs. Email them one tip per week. Provide them the downloadable cybersecurity reports via email or your websites. Hold cybersecurity webinars or live seminars in your local area. When spending money on social media, Facebook ad campaign will give you the best returns today. All of this will promote you as a cybersecurity expert and build that sense of trust that's no necessary in order to succeed is the business. It will also help you to get a foot in the door. As we move forward in the digital age, cybersecurity should be a core business objective. No matter how large a small business is, and being proactive can only protect you. Make it a priority today. You have to convince your customers, your clients, that cybersecurity is how much important in this generation, in this time. Cybersecurity in India. Cybersecurity attacks and breaches in the country have jumped as much as 500 since the lockdown was first announced in March, according to a research by Hindustan Times, I guess. India ranks third in the terms of highest number of internet users in the world after USA and China. The number has grown sixfold between 2012 to 2017, when Geo came through. Our all the internet users grown so massively, with a compound annual growth rate of 44%. In India, India secures a spot amongst the top 10 spam sending countries in the world alongside USA. India was ranked among the top 5 countries to be affected by cybercrimes according to a report by Simon Tepcock. These all show how our India is facing cyber attacks, and which means that the rise of necessity of cybersecurity will also increase. And that's how the entrepreneurship or cybersecurity firm or cybersecurity startup will arise. So here are some data and numbers I would like to show you. Here you can see that 5 crore 28 lakh 20,874 is the number of local threats in Q1 2020 in India. 4 crore 7 lakh 57 is the, according to a firm, the number of local threats detected in Q4 2019 was. So you can see the difference between them, like how the cybercrime have increased rapidly, and 5 lakh cyber attacks we face daily. Now I would like to show you a recent video clip of our Prime Minister Narendra Modi from the recent Independence Day, and here you go.
बदलती हुई टेक्नोलॉजी में साइबर स्पेस, ये हमारी निर्भरता बढ़ती ही जाने वाली है, लेकिन साइबर स्पेस में खतरे भी जुड़े हुए होते हैं। भली भांति दुनिया इससे अब परिचित है और इनसे देश के सामाजिक ताने बाने, हमारी अर्थव्यवस्था और हमारे देश के विकास पर भी खतरे पैदा करने का ये आसान मार्ग बन सकता है। और इसलिए भारत इसमें बहुत सचेत है, भारत बहुत सतर्क है और इन खतरों का सामना करने के लिए फैसले ले रहा है। इतना ही नहीं, नई व्यवस्थाएं भी लगातार विकसित की जा रही है। बहुत ही अल्प समय में नई साइबर सुरक्षा रणनीति, इसका एक पूरा खाका देश के सामने आएगा। आने वाले समय में सब इकाइयों को जोड़ करके हम इस साइबर सिक्योरिटी के अंदर सबको एक साथ चलना पड़ेगा। उसके लिए आगे बढ़ने की रणनीति बनाएंगे। आपने सोचा होगा, क्या कभी इतना तेजी से गांव तक ऑनलाइन क्लासेस का इतना माहौल बन जाएगा? कभी कभी आफत में भी कुछ ऐसी चीजें उभर करके आ जाती हैं, नई ताकत दे देती हैं। और इसलिए आपने देखा होगा, कोरोना काल में ऑनलाइन क्लासेस एक प्रकार से कल्चर बन गया है। आप देखिए, ऑनलाइन डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शन वो भी कैसे बढ़ रहे हैं। भीम यूपीआई गत एक महीने में, यानी किसी को भी गर्व होगा कि भारत जैसे देश में यूपीआई भीम के द्वारा गत एक महीने में 3 लाख करोड़ रुपए का ट्रांजैक्शन हुआ है। ये अपने आप में हम किस प्रकार से बदली हुई स्थितियों को स्वीकार करने लगे हैं, ये इसका नमूना है। आप देखते हैं, 2014 से पहले हमारे देश में 5 दर्जन पंचायतें, 5 दर्जन पंचायतों में ऑप्टिकल फाइबर था। गत 5 वर्ष में 1.5 लाख ग्राम पंचायतों तक ऑप्टिकल फाइबर नेटवर्क पहुंच चुका है, जो आज इतना मदद कर रहा है। सभी पंचायतों में पहुंचने के लक्ष्य के साथ हमने काम शुरू किया था। जो 1 लाख पंचायतें बाकी हैं, वहां भी तेजी से काम चल रहा है। लेकिन बदली पड़ी हुई परिस्थिति में गांव की भी डिजिटल इंडिया में भागीदारी अनिवार्य बन गई है। गांव के लोगों को भी इस प्रकार की ऑनलाइन सुविधाओं की जरूरत बढ़ गई है। इसको ध्यान में रखते हुए पहले जो हमने कार्यक्रम बनाया था, हर पंचायत तक पहले पहुंचेंगे, लेकिन आज मैं आपसे बताना चाहूंगा कि अब हमने तय किया है कि सभी 6 लाख से ज्यादा जो हमारे गांव है, उन सभी गांवों में ऑप्टिकल फाइबर नेटवर्क पहुंचाया जाएगा। जरूरत बदली है तो हमने प्रायोरिटी भी बदली है। 6 लाख से अधिक गांवों में हजारों लाखों किलोमीटर ऑप्टिकल फाइबर का काम चलाया जाएगा। और हमने तय किया है 1000 दिन में, 1000 दिन के अंदर अंदर देश के 6 लाख से अधिक गांवों में ऑप्टिकल फाइबर नेटवर्क काम पूरा कर दिया जाएगा।
So now, as you saw that our Prime Minister told us about the NCSS 2020. So now let's understand what is NCSS 2020. The Government of India is formulating a National Cybersecurity Strategy 2020, that is NCSS 2020, for 5 years, that is 2020 to 2025. This strategy is to ensure safe, secure, trusted, resilient and vibrant cyberspace for our nation's prosperity. India has 36 different central bodies to look after cyber issues. Each organization has its own reporting structure and CERT, Indian Computer Emergency Response Team. On the other hand, countries like US, Singapore, etc. have a national cybersecurity organization that deals with cyber threats. In the year 2016, banks announced that details of 3.2 million debit cards were leaked. In 2018, Cosmos Bank based in Pune lost ₹94 crore in malware attack. In September 2019, the Kundankulam nuclear plant was attacked via malware. India's digital economy comprises as 40 to 15% of its total economy, and it's expected to rise up to 20% by 2024. Thus, there is an urgent need for India to upgrade its cyberspace and strategy. Many countries around the globe are resorting to digital warfare, and hackers are targeting business organization and government processes. Amidst this, India needs enhanced cybersecurity guidelines and standards to keep a check on cyber vulnerabilities and cyber responses. The legacy Windows XP systems are still used at many places in India, which are prone to cyber attacks. Thus, this is the need for an upgraded cybersecurity strategy in India, and that's what NCSS 2020 is doing. Now, start developing tools for private, government, and public organizations. Like you can develop tools for private organization. You can also develop OSINT tools for government and police agencies, and they are looking for some organizations or some persons to help them in developing cyber safety and intelligence tools. You can also develop tools for public for their safety, like antivirus and awareness kinds of applications and many more. Let me show you some examples for you, and here goes our first one. Safe by Lucidius. Safe is an application developed by cybersecurity firm Lucidius. SAFE stands for Security Assessment Framework for Enterprise, a cloud-based mobile-first approach to access the cybersecurity awareness of all the employees and help quantify cyber risk posed by the workforce and improve overall information security awareness within the organization. Surakshit app. Last month, when I was doing an internship with Gurugram Police, where my team developed an Android application, Surakshit Legitimacy Detection Tool project, we have developed the URL Authentication Detection Tool. This tool is built for both mobile and application and web application. The mobile application uses the API from the virustotal.com to check whether the site is malicious or not. It will help to analyze the suspicious files and URLs to detect types of malware automatically. The machine learning model is deployed for the web application, which works on the algorithms. So that's it for today. Thank you everyone for being a wonderful audience and being a part of RESTCON. I highly appreciate Team Resethacker for giving me this opportunity. I hope you all have learned something new and got a basic idea of how to start a cybersecurity firm in India and how it actually works. These are my social media handles. Feel free to contact with me and ping me if you have any question or any doubt. I would love to interact with you all. Okay, so that's it. Thank you.
Hi everyone, this is Shankar Raj Subramanian here. I'm a certified ethical hacker and cybercrime consultant. I'm the founder and CEO of Prompt Infotech. I've been working in this field for around 15 years. I've, uh, I've, I've provided cybersecurity solutions to many corporates. I've traveled to 45 countries till now, and I've delivered 100 plus international trainings, and I've been servicing to global clients for cybersecurity, pen testing, and other cybercrime related attacks. And coming to today's topic, it's about manual VAPT. So let's first see what is vulnerability assessment. What is vulnerability assessment, and where do you actually need this? So vulnerability assessment. Okay. Vulnerability assessment probably starts with when you develop a product, or when you develop a website. You have a network infrastructure, you have a server which is going to provide services to a lot of other clients, or you have your product which is being used by global consumers, by your users, and you want to make sure your product is safe and it is secure. So companies, once the product is being launched, yes, the normal testing of the product is done by the testing team. What do you mean by normal testing? They'll check if the software is working perfect, and is there any bug which is stopping the product from running. We have many things like this which normal testing teams will perform. When it comes to security testing, when it comes to security assessment, or when it comes to security testing here, what we do is vulnerability assessment. So vulnerability is weakness. As you all know, it's a weakness. So you're going to test the weakness of any server, or you're going to test the weakness of any network, or you are going to test the weakness of any web application, or it can be a website, or it can be a mobile, can be anything. So any product entity which you have, probably we'll be checking for the vulnerability assessment here. And when it comes to vulnerability assessment, we have two different approaches to be followed. One is automatic, the other one is manual. Wherein automatic will use a lot of tools, probably the human intervention will be very less. So as an analyst, I'm the analyst here, and I'm performing automatic VAPT. So I'll be using a lot of tools. Tools will perform a lot of function here, and as an output, yes, my job is to analyze the report or the output what is being generated there. So we have this approach or manual approach, which requires less tools usage and which requires more of a human intervention here. So when it comes to more of a human intervention here, probably the skill set which is required for the analyst should be more. Why? Because he is not totally going to rely on the software or the tool, and the test cases, whatever you are going to perform, it needs to be accurate, it needs to be efficient to analyze what is happening. And yes, it is very obvious, manual based vulnerability assessment is time consuming. Some cases it might be time consuming, but this has become mandatory now. Why? Because we shouldn't miss out, or we shouldn't be deceived by any false positives. False positives can come up when you rely totally on tools. So to cross check that, it is good to use tools, but when you look at the results, it is always good to reconfirm. It is always good to recheck if the vulnerability what you have found is true or not. So we have different approaches for manual vulnerability assessment here: VAPT, vulnerability assessment, and pen testing. So manual approach to this, initially it can be enumeration, which can help you a lot. It can be scanning, it can be fuzzing, which can give you a lot of information about your target or about the particular web application what you're targeting. So the first is we test for internal web application. You can test an internal web application. Then you can go for testing infrastructure. You can go with infrastructure, and probably then you can go for testing for code reviews, and we'll go for testing wireless, and then we'll see something about the risk assessment, what is being done, and something about compliance, which plays a major role in this. Fine. So when you're going for testing web application, what possible vulnerabilities or what possible bugs can be identified? You can find business logic errors or data leakage, and configuration issues. Anything which is being misconfigured, or which is not configured properly, not configured securely. Anything can be something like this. So we'll go for testing internal web application, which is bugs. Probably the bugs is business logic errors and data leakage and configuration issues here. So when it comes for this, yes, we'll be using a less of tools here. So we'll take a specific target here for all these testings. I'll tell you how you can start with. I'm not going to go in detail, but we'll take a target as an example. We'll go for this site called novochem.net, which is an Egyptian website. I think they are related to painting. So we'll go for this novochem.net. So we have this website here, Novochem, and okay, the website here, and let's go to discover. In case if you're looking for any business logic error, or if you're looking for a data leakage in this, right? You're looking for data leakage or configuration issues. Probably to understand this site much better, you can either go for buildwith.com, or you can go for extensions like this, Vapalizer, which can help you in getting a basic idea of what this site is about. In case if you are very new to this site and you want to understand your site, which is much needed in information gathering and enumeration, probably we can go for any add-on, or you have so many other tools which you can use to find out what is being used here. And yes, we have Nginx as a web server, Bootstrap, PHP, and we also have the version. Okay, we'll use it later. Now, to understand this site, what is vulnerable, I will just go to Google, and we can start with a basic enumeration of, say, we can check if there is something with this particular domain. We'll go for in URL this, and we'll go for index of. I'm checking if there is any index files which Google can access. And when you go for this, yes, we have a lot of index files here. You have log files. Probably that can come under data leakage. So what we are seeing here is this. We are trying to test an internal web application, probably for conducting any manual approach. In case if you have prior permission, you will have the exact web application. But as an attacker from outside, we are seeing not an attacker, but as an analyst, you want to find some bugs which is related to any internal web application. Yes, probably we can find something like this. And you have log files here. And when you open these log files, you can see if we have any sensitive information or any data leaks here from this. And yes, probably when you analyze this, we will get few information which can be of interest here. Or you can also go for we'll give index of, and site is novochem.net, right? Novochem.net, index of, and enter. You have CSS. Okay, you have few files which can be sensitive. You have images, you have gallery, store logs, we have seen. So one good thing what we can do is this, and in case you want to understand the site much more better, and you want to go with the infrastructure of this, probably the type of bugs what you can look for is outdated. When it comes to testing infrastructure, it can be outdated software which you are looking for, can be open ports or any, right? So outdated software, we need to check if our target here is using any outdated software, and if it is being vulnerable, if any unusual ports are open, and if they have any services which are running in the background. So this can come under testing infrastructure manually. So outdated software, we have many tools for finding out all these things, but we'll go for a basic web-based tool which can help you with this. SSL Labs can be one site which okay, and the host name what we have is this Summit, and we also have ImmuniWeb, which is going to run a lot of tests against your target, and it is going to check what is being vulnerable with the network infrastructure, probably with the server certificates or with anything else what you are trying to access. Okay, we'll give this here, run the scan. So it is running all the scans against a remote server, and here if you look, probably you will have few results which can interest you. The scan is running, will wait for it to complete. Okay. ImmuniWeb has done the scan, and probably when you're looking at compliance reports, you can check with GPDR, you can check with PCI DSS, and a lot of other complaints in case you want to include. Yes, the paid version can be much helpful, but the free version of this tool, it can help you with this. So when looking at outdated softwares, when we scroll down, we have few CMS components and we have few issues with that. So the fingerprinted version is outdated. jQuery is outdated, fine, which the site is using. Twitter Bootstrap is outdated, and CMS common cookies with potentially sensitive information is being sent out without a secure flag. And yes, an automated tool can give you a clubbed report of all these things, but in case you want to cross-verify, you wanted to perform a deeper analysis, to start with, yes, this can be helpful, or you can also go for in detail analysis, which can give you a lot of other information here. And SSL Labs, yes, probably you will have the server supports this. Okay, sites only work in browsers with the SNI support, so older browsers will not support this site, which doesn't support SNI. So probably that can be one issue with the certificates and other things. And what algorithms do they support, and which devices will support this? You will get a lot of information about this, right? Or you can go for a basic tool like Nmap to check what ports are open and what services are running. So let me go for this. I'll type Nmap, and we will scan for all the ports. Novochem.net, yes. Okay, internet is on, yes. Okay, it is novochem.net, yes. Novochem.net, enter. So probably Nmap is going to tell you which ports are open here and what services are running. You have n number of scans. In case if an automated tool is going to suggest you that this particular target server, what you are trying to access, is being vulnerable to this particular attack, right? You can cross-check that with Nmap, and you have specified scripts which can perform a lot of things with regards to vulnerability assessment. You can use those scripts and check if it is working or not. So it is loading, and we have few ports which are being open here, and FTP is open. We have few other ports which are open here. So let's wait for the result here and see what happens. And so when you're testing for infrastructure, probably you can get bugs like this. So outdated software for this particular target, we know that Twitter Bootstrap is being vulnerable. jQuery is outdated. And for open ports and running services here, we have started our scan with Nmap, and it is running. Probably we should be getting the result of in detail result of what this scan is about. I mean, like what ports are being opened, because we are trying to scan all the ports here. All the 65,535 ports are being scanned, and it is going to give you all sensitive information about the infrastructure which you are going to test. You have paid tools which can do this. You have Nessus, you have NetSparker, but probably to start with, to find a basic level, yes, this can help you a lot. Okay, let it load. We'll go for code reviews, and in code reviews, the problem bugs, what you can find is private key exposure. You can look for private key exposure or any misconfiguration which can result in sensitive data being revealed. Okay, it's loading. Fine, we'll move on with this. And for this, we'll go with Google, and for any sensitive information. So for sensitive information, you can check if they have backup. I'll check index of backup. backup, Novo, Chem.net, .net. No, in URL, no, Chem.net, or you can search for some other files for sensitive information. I'll look for a particular file type called NB, and in URL this. Yes, we have private key exposure here. Probably you have a key, we have database username, password. Probably the server should be reviewed for the code which, or this directory should be blocked, because all sensitive information, and when it is being exposed like this, yes, that can lead to a lot of other types of bugs and vulnerabilities. This is what we'll be doing. So here I'm just showing you a random, showing you randomly what can be done for the time what is being given. We cannot go in detail, but to just check with. But in actual pen testing, when you go for pen testing, it is actually the test cases. You will have different test cases for different scenarios. Say, for example, if you have a login page, right? In case if it is a login page, you will go and check with a lot of authentication and authorization issues. Authentication and authorization issues. Your test cases can be like this. Say, probably the first test case, what you'll go for is check for default usernames and password. Right? This is test number 1, which you will conduct. Right? Then you will try to brute force and check if there is any no rate limiting set. In case if there is no rate limiting for a logging page, brute force can work. And then you can go for forgot password, and you can probably check with the token which is being sent to you email. When you click forgot password, probably you will get your so I'll get a reset link for this email in case if I have registered, and I'll check if the token, if there is any bug or any vulnerability with the token, password reset token. So here it is password reset token, and I'll check if the password reset token expires or it does not expire. Doesn't expire. Fine, I can check for this. So you have n number of test cases. When you go for manual VAPT, the only thing which you should concentrate, or the knowledge of any analyst depends on the number of test cases he is going to perform, and these test cases differs from server to server, from web application to application, based on the technologies what it is being built with. We have different types of test cases, and you should also be knowing the bypassing techniques. We are not going to do anything bad with this, but being an analyst, we should concentrate, or we should look at the bypassing techniques to check if the target is vulnerable, or if the target misses something else, right? So we are trying to do this, and this is private key exposure. Probably with the open ports, I think the scan is still running. Okay. Hopefully it completes, right? And testing wireless. For wireless, probably you cannot be testing it from here, but for testing wireless, you can. The probable bugs, what you can identify is, you can try a lot with access control issues. Who is going to access this wireless, and issues with man-in-the-middle attack, or with ARP spoofing, or you can look for weak encryption. When you go for manual, you can try one by one. And yes, for this you can go for hardware tools. You can go for hardware. Probably Wi-Fi Pineapple can be used. This can be used for testing out a lot of vulnerabilities for pen testing, if your wireless is good or bad, right? And after this, you have risk assessment. Probably risk assessment will give you a score. Most of the pen testers, after completing the test cases, based on the test case, based on the vulnerability of report, what they have generated, what they have, they'll come up with a score, and you will be giving this to your client. So we'll always consider if the risk score is higher, or are they having a high risk factor, or they are having a medium risk factor, or they have a low risk factor. This comes in auditing. When you go for audit, and you try something out, probably the final result what you're going to give will be in the form of a report, and this report, it can give an overview of what can happen, right? How is their network infrastructure? How is their application? Is it at high risk or medium risk? Just like the tools what we have seen here. Okay, I think I've closed that. Okay, this, when you see here, it is giving you the final score of, it is giving you a grade as well. And when it comes to complaints, based on different complaints here, probably you will have a lot of things which you have to consider, and we go with that. Okay, it's still running, but we have many ports which are being vulnerable, and many services which is running in the background. And okay, we'll wait for this. Fine. So yes, as I told you, we have both manual and you have both automated techniques which can be used for VAPT. And based on your time, based on the requirement, we have to choose whether we have to go for automated or manual. And for me, like, manual is going to help you a lot to recheck what is there, and to reconfirm the vulnerabilities what is being present. And you should also have a knowledge of PCI DSS and HIPAA. Based on the client's requirement, you might have to run few scans, or you might have to audit few things based on the complaints what they expect. So knowledge of that is also needed. And probably, in case if you are a fresher looking out for a career in pen testing, probably pen testing is as an excellent domain, because every new client which you are going to work with, and every job which you take, is going to be totally different, and you will have new challenges to be which you should face. And yes, in case if you like this domain, you will enjoy each and every challenge here. And pen testing, yes, you need knowledge of networks, you need knowledge of servers, you need knowledge of operating system, and a bit of programming, which will be needed for you guys. And without this, probably when you go for pen testing, when you're testing a server, say for example, you're going to test server 2000. Okay, we'll go for server 2012. It's a Microsoft Server 2012, and you don't know anything about this server. And without this, in case if you're going to pen test this server, probably you will be following few strategies without knowing what is happening in the background, which is actually bad. When you're going for automated, yes, you will have tools, you will know how to run scans and how to analyze the result. That is perfect. But when questioned about what is being in the report and what countermeasures you have to do, you won't be in a position to answer unless and until you have exact or good knowledge of this particular server here. Fine. Yes, tools, in case you give any IP address, you give any domain name, the tool is going to give you the result of what is going to happen. You don't have to do anything. Just like this, you can wait for this, and you can analyze the result. That is okay. But when it comes to impact and countermeasures, you should be in a position to have a meaningful conversation with the client. In that case, any domain which you are going to pen test, probably you should know the proper defensive strategies of what is being done, how the server is installed, how it is configured, how a client is connected, how does it provide services, what is happening in the background. Only if you know this, and then if you start with pen testing, you might be having you might be understanding what is happening in the background, and you will get a better perspective of whatever is happening. So have a good knowledge of this for freshers who are into this field. And again, pen testing, ethical hacking, cybersecurity is like engineering. You have so many domains in this. We have so many domains. Each domain can be sometimes it can be related to other, but few domains will be totally different. Like we have programming domains, we have non-programming domains. So don't think pen testing will be full of programming. Yes, we do have programming when it comes to software and source code reviews. Yes, when you are going to analyze a source code and you're going to find vulnerabilities in that, probably you might be needing a lot of programming skills. If you're going to analyze an Android source code, yes, you might be needing a lot of skills with related to programming. But when it comes to server and when it comes to network, the programming, yes, it will be there, but probably it will be used less. So people who say I don't know anything about programming and I'm totally a non-programmer. Yes, we also have few domains for that, and you can totally look into that domain. And yes, a person who is doing pen testing for a network, he is a network pen tester, right? Versus if you take a pen tester for a web application, right? Their skill sets and their knowledge or their area of interest will be totally different. This network pen tester might concentrate totally on devices. He will be concentrating on switches, routers, firewalls, VPNs, a lot of things like this. When it comes to web application, probably he might be needing few things about server, but he will concentrate a lot about codes. He will concentrate a lot about how this web application is going to interact, how this is going to react, and test cases for both of these domains will be different. So we have to understand that it's like engineering, which has many domains here, and probably we will have to choose your domain and then go for pen testing of that. And yes, manual and automated approach, we have to decide which is best suited for us. Automated scans, automated pen testing tools can give you immediate results, and the domain knowledge for any analyst can be less or not less, like he can have very less understanding of what is happening in the background. But when you go for manual VAPT, most of the vulnerabilities which have been missed by automated process can be covered in manual vulnerability assessment here, and it can have the analyst to, it requires the analyst to need more skill set and more understanding, because what you're going to do is manual assessment, and in case of manual assessment, probably you need to understand. It is going to be time consuming, and it is always good to recheck and reconfirm the missed vulnerabilities or the shared vulnerabilities. The scan is complete here, and as you can see, we have a lot of ports which are open here, and along with the version of the services which are being run in the background. cPanel unauthorized, and you have MySQL port which is open, and yes. So when you're scanning for an infrastructure, we should be scanning at what ports are open, what services are running, and what version is this. Yep. So I hope you got some basic idea of what is pen testing and what do you mean by vulnerability assessment, and as a pen tester, what kind of methods do you have in vulnerability assessment? What is manual approach and what is automated approach? Right. Thanks for your time and patience. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Hello everyone, this is Chen Ren. I'm really happy to participate in this RESTCON 2020 and be a speaker to share my professional cybersecurity experience with you guys. So today I would like to mainly talk about the automating the cyber attack with Caldera, which is a cyber attack tool for adversary simulation. But before we start this topic, let me do a brief introduction of myself. So about me, I'm a senior security consultant working at Deloitte Consulting. I'm a penetration tester, red team professional, and an associate specialist. I have like OSCP, SWP, and 35 ethical hackers. So if you'd like to discuss more about cybersecurity with me, welcome to add me on Instagram. So let's get it started with today's topic. So what is adversary simulation? So adversary simulation is different with penetration testing from different aspects. As we know, like penetration testing mainly focuses on like getting into the enterprise's network intrusions, but the adversary simulation focuses on the enterprise ability to deal with an attack, which is post-compromise. So like there are also many other words as threat simulations, purple teaming, attack emulations, where they all mean the same. Because the adversary simulations focus on the customer's ability to deal with like an attack, a post-compromise, and these assessments mainly look at the incident response abilities and provide like valuable live fire training for the analyst. And the ultimate goal is to improve like the whole security posture of an organizations. So I could say the purple teaming means adversary simulation where it combines both right and blue, and it's described as using like a TTP, where tactics, techniques, procedures like kill chain. So I'm not going to discuss like in detail about the cyber kill chain, but there are 7 steps like reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery, exploitations, installation, command and control, and finally the exfiltration. Now let's start talking about why do we need adversary simulation. Consider the concept of purple teaming. The red teams are internal or external entities, and they're dedicated to test the effectiveness of the security program by emulating the tools or techniques like real hackers and a bunch of penetration testers, like they try to find the vulnerabilities of a security program. But blue teams refer to the internal security team, like they're dedicated to defend the real hackers or red team professionals, like the SOC or all the security monitoring systems. And so the concept of the purple team exists to ensure and maximize the effectiveness of the red team and blue teams, because they do this by integrating the defensive techniques and the controls from blue team with the threats and vulnerabilities found by the red team, and into a single narrative that maximizes both. Ideally, purple shouldn't be a team at all, but rather a permanent dynamic relationship between the red and blue. Okay, so this slide I put the detailed list of between the red team and the blue team. So in this slide we can see the detailed list from what a red team can do and what a blue team can do, and their disadvantages and the lacks between both teams. Okay, so how can we build a purple team? What is the prerequisites for the purple team? So like for the blue teams, what we need is like a central logging platform, SOC systems like the SIEM, security monitorings, and also we need a bunch of like security professionals like penetration testers to know all the attacking skills. all in all, the purple means we make red more blue and make blue more red. For writing, we need to understand like prevention, detection, and response techniques, like the presents to as the TTPs to the blue teams. And for blue team, we need to understand and follow up the known adversary TTPs like military attack frameworks, where they're all pretty much like complete techniques that an attackers can do. Alright, so now let's start talking about our main topic for today, the Caldera, where this adversary emulation with Caldera. So what is Caldera? Caldera is a tool. It's an automatic and open source tool for like an emulation system. It's built on the military attack framework, and it works on attaching abilities to an adversary and running the adversary in operations. So it mainly focusing things is an adversary emulation, so that focus on the post-compromise. I give here an example. For example, like now we have already got an initial foothold on the compromised host, and later what we could use the Caldera to do is like discovery, the task list, the local root admins, and to automatically see how we can do the privilege escalation to escalate our privilege to the root or administrator. And as we are already the administrator now, we can like dump the credentials with Mimikais or like Letha dump, and we could also use that to do a bunch of lateral movement, including like the passive hash or others. And like adversary simulation tool, Caldera is built on the attack matrix tactics and techniques. Here is the chart, the matrix attacks from the attack.matrix.org. If you are interested in that, you could just visit the website. I'm not going to talk about the matrix attack in detail here. And now let's start our demo time. I have built an environment like using the Kali Linux and installed the Caldera running on the Kali, and I also have a Windows system to be the victim to show you guys how the Caldera can work. Okay, so now let's start our demo. We have a Kali Linux machines running on the VirtualBox, and it's so I put like the Kali and the Windows on the NOT network, so which means they're on the same network. Where one is 10.0.2.4 and the other is 10.0.2.15. In this case, we can like use a really simple technique to get the initial foothold to compromise this victim with just a manipulator shell. Of course, in real situations, you can like they're really not necessary to be on the same network, but it's just for demo case. Okay, and I have already downloaded Caldera from the source link, like from the GitHub open source. And to run the Caldera, we just need to use Python 3 installed, server.py, and insecure. The reason I run it as insecure is because like the password and the admin will be pretty easy to remember. And it's hosted on the localhost 8080. So I think it's the right, and the admin will be password. Okay. And now we have come to the interface of the Caldera. There are many like plugins and bars on this page. If you're interested, you can read the documents is from here. So just let me do a brief introduction of what plugins And what about like the agent is the terminology. The Sandcat is the Trojan, and it's a program that we can easily deploy on any computers for the persistent connection back. Okay, so before we start like doing anything on the Caldera, let us just use a simple technique to hack the Windows victim and get it compromised. So we have to run it as root. Okay, now let's just generate a shell for a temperature shell with MS Venom first. So the payload should be the Windows Interpreter and reverse TCP, and our host, let's just, which is our local host, is the 10.0 to 2.4, and let's use the out port as like 4444 and exe, and run it as putty.exe. This one mistake from here, we have to do fexe.putty.exe. The reason I put putty.exe because like that's pretty like popular Windows like exe program that people will be treated easily if we have this title. And now it's generated the shell. Just need to wait a couple of seconds. Okay, now we have this putty.exe shell already. Let's copy it to the var of www.html and start our Apache server. Okay, and now we can use MS console to run a listener for incoming connections. Use exploit the multi-handler. Set our outhost as 10.2.4 and set our output to 444 and set our payload to Windows Interpreter reverse TCP. Okay, now we're good to go. Okay, let's jump to our victim machine. Just to open the page. There's 2.4. We already have the putty.exe file. Let's run it. Now we can see a multiplayer session has opened, and when we tap shell, and now we see we have already got into this Windows systems as who am I, and it's the Chinese PC. Now we have got all this control of this Windows system having this multiplayer shell. Alright, so we have already got our multiplayer shells and get into the Windows system, our victim. So right now we need to deploy an agent in order to automatically run the Caldera's adversary simulation systems. For here, we choose this 54 NDC 47 because this is the Sandcat as we saw it before. And since our victim is a Windows system, so we are going to select this a go-along agent, which communicates through the HTTP contact through PowerShell. Okay, so let's copy this script and open a txt pad. So what the script does is for this, the server, we need to change it to our local host, which is 10.0.2.4 before, if I have remembered it in a correct way. Let's just double check. Yes, 10.0.2.4, and our server port is 8080, and the URLs from here, it just means to specify our our host and our file places, and this means we're using this PowerShell script, and it's like requesting the SandCat libraries, requesting the extensions, and to download the SandCat the trojans to the victim systems. So let's get it started to start the PowerShells on the victim. On the victim session. So first, let's just start the PowerShell script. It may take a while, but let's just copy this and let it run. Alright, so for now we have a PID sessions associated with that. Now we can keep configuring our adversary to see what we could do on the compromised host. For example, the existing profile, we could select different activities. For collections, we can ordering to find the company emails, IP addresses, files, or staging directory, and we could do multiple activities or we could even do the super spy on the host. So let's just choose an easy way, for example, the terminal, which that execute the command and controls. Save this right now, and let's keep to run these operations, where the operations let us to do a basic options, we can do the red team activities, and the profile we can choose the terminals, and keep opening or auto close, run immediately, and we can, after configure everything, we can just let it run. Or just still pretty just, since this is a demo, so I'm just using the basic configurations. And now we are starting the decision, and it's running right now. I see this agent is running the Manix on here, and then it's going to run the multiple activities as long as we configure different adversaries and operations right here. See, there's only one activity has been here, and maybe potential links. And finally, I would like to show you these documents, guys, from Caldera website, and there's pretty much more things than on this Caldera than I have presented right here, things due to the time. And so there are pretty much games, a gaming board for you to practice writing practice and blue team exercises using obfuscators or planners. And there's a reference documents to even you can use this to help you make decisions. And one thing that I'm really impressed is the matrix attack framework, that it uses different tactics, the metrics and tactics for executing an attack. We could see the different stages and the different activities that a hacker could use. So if you're interested in this adversary simulation topics, I would highly recommend you to keep doing research on this attack. And thank you for watching. Welcome to discuss and talk more with me after this conference. Thank you.
Hi guys, welcome to the session. Thank you for joining. The session is about bypassing scrap detection using Python. Let me introduce myself. I'm Ananda, also known as Tech Wizard. I'm working as a developer at Security community. I'm also a student ambassador of Red Hat Academy at SKCT. I am cybersecurity enthusiastic. I have played 25 plus CTFs globally and nationally. I have won those CTFs too. I am a pen tester, Python scripter, and web developer. So before getting into the session, this is a small classic disclaimer to show that the tips and tricks which I'm showing in this session will be entirely for education purpose, and we are against the misuse of these informations. And so without any further ado, let's get started. Here is the agenda of the session. From basic scrapping, how to scrap and those things, till we will go up to captcha bypass, which means using the text kind of captchas and or number kind of captchas to bypass it. We have anonymous by using Tor, headless modules, Cloudflare, free proxies, CSRF bypass. Let's get started. Here are the few modules or packages of the Python which we will be using in this session to make the things easy. For example, the beautiful soup is the one of the package which is used everywhere to scrap the HTML pages in an easier fashion. Selenium is an automation tool for web browsers. XML and HTML are the parser which we will be using, and all these packages will be using one after other in the upcoming the next slides. First and foremost thing, we need to make a GUI version of the HTML page into source code so that we can scrap into it. This curl2py request is a wonderful tool which we will be using to make each and every GUI version of HTML page into Python, direct Python script. So I will showcase you how to do that. curl.drillworks.com. You will see two dialog boxes having the curl command and Python request, which means once you paste the curl command here, it will be converted automatically to the Python program or the script. You have more number of options here, like making into a Rust program or something. But before that, we need to get a curl command. Let's go on some website and get the curl command. You can see that in develop tools, there will be an option called networks, where each and every request that goes and comes through the browser will be shown. For this site, let's refresh and get the curl. Like once you refresh the page, you will have a get request going from the browser to the server. Right click and copy as curl. Once you paste here, it will be converted into direct Python request. I will copy this and paste it here. Once you paste it, you will get the response like 200 or 303 or the status code of it, but we don't need that. We need the content or the text from the response. So once you are done, you can run the script and just give it a second and get the source code of the entire page. This is what we need as a first step towards scrapping. And now we are ready with the source code of the page, and let's get into the scrapping things. First and foremost, this is when you repeatedly run this script for like 10 to 15 times, if the website is pretty secured with bot detection, it will definitely going to block you. So how to bypass the initial steps of the scrapping, like using the basic scrapping techniques, the bypassing techniques. Here, first and foremost thing is the user agents. We need to use real agents. Like when you are going to use, I will show you the difference between the real agent and user agent. Here comes a tool called http:/anything. In the sense, it will print you the what request did you send to the server. It will show you the header, the content which you have sent, the original IP. Through this IP, the request has been sent. Like this is my IP. So you can see the user agent which I used was Mozilla, because I'm using the Mozilla Firefox browser, so it shows. Let's test with Python. Let's not include this header part, and let's send the request and see what the user agent menu does not use any kind of. See, we got the header of the request. You can see the user agent which we are using is Python request. So these kind of bot or the programmatic user agents will be blacklisted in the main site. So you need to use a real user agent. How, in the sense, you need to add a header with the real user agent, and you need to parse in the request module as header equal to headers. So this header dictionary will be sent to the request as the actual header. Let's clean up this and request again. So we got the request. So see here, the once you replace the means you overwrite the Python request header with an Mozilla or the real header, it will be replaced and overwritten. And so when the request goes, it will be like a legitimate in the real browser. So, but you might be having a doubt how to get these user agents. You will be having like fake user agent dot. This is an absolutely amazing package where you can just like pip install fake user agents, and you can use this package to rotate different kinds of user agents. Like each and every time when you access the package, you will get a different see like ua.opera will give you the user agent like Opera browser, like Opera 9.8. So each and every time when you give you access this, it will give you different user agents. So this will be an amazing package. Next thing is referral tags. So these referral tags means the request came from the site. So when you tag the same site or the site which seems to be legitimate, that will think like so the request came from the other page, so it will be allowing you easily. The next one is web caching. Like these websites are being cached by Google, so you can directly go to web.google cache. Once you go there, you have an option called query cache the URL of the web page. Once you add the URL, you will get the web page which has been cached, and you will have the timestamp when the web page has been cached. So with the help of this, you can these kind of cache browsers will not block the bot, so you can run this in number of times. Here comes the beautiful soup module where we will be using this for scrapping the pages. We have a test site called webscraper.io/test site. This is some kind of an e-commerce sample site where you have the product images and product title with the description. So let's imagine we need to scrap the images from these pages. So once in inspector we can check what the image has. It does not have any kind of interesting thing. Let's move to the scripting part. As I said already, we need to get the response tag and we need to put it into pass it into the beautiful soup module. And let's get all image tags and print the image source out of it. So it's like in dictionary. So if you give the key value, it will return you the value of the key. So that's it. You get the each and every image with the location of it. This is how it's simple to scrap using beautiful. Like you can do whatever you want. Like you can do, if it has an ID or a name, you can get it from that, or you can do like .inner HTML if it has a description to it. That's how simple and easy when you are going to use beautiful soup. Next comes the free proxy thing where when you when the site is protective and it has an IP block listing, like when you're repeatedly using 5 or more requests from a single IP, it is going to block you. So free proxy is an kind of service where it will provide you the IPs with port numbers. So you can see even it has like 100 to 50 proxies, but copying these will be again difficult. But we have an text area with all predefined proxy with the port number. You can see here this is an text area with all things, so you need to scrap the text area out of the page. So I have written to make the things easier. So you need to request to it and pass the response text here and scrap the text area out. Soup.find will get you the text area, but we need the inner content into it. So we get dot text and print the proxy. Now we will get the proxy with these full content. From there we need to pass each, and we cannot say that all proxy and port will be working, so we need to run through the for loop. So if one is working, we can break out of it, and we have a condition that while passing the proxies we need to pass like HTTP and HTTPS, because we don't know whether it is in secure with SSL or not secure. So you need to pass it like HTTP dot / with the IP and port number mentioned, and they can pass into the request like proxies equal to proxies. And let's run and see whether one at least works out of this. We from the list we got the proxy with port number. This is the request without any kind of proxy, and let's wait for the proxy works or not. Because when the proxy is not working, it will result in a timeout, and it will throw an exception because it does not have any kind of the content within it. The next one is CSRF bypass, where this is a wonderful bypass technique when you have like login panel to it. Let's go into DNS dumpster. This website is used for dumping out of the DNS data of a domain. Here you have an input with a search. Let's give something like security.org. Once you give it will search and give you the results of the DNS details of the domain. Let's say you need to scrap the site, but let's inspect the request, what the actual request is going like. So you can see there is a CSRF middle token, but we don't know what is the token actually. These tokens will be dynamically generated for each and every request, so you cannot give it a random value. So I already have the script for it. Like when you parse, I will just comment this and I will show you what happens when you does not have an CSRF token. Okay, let me delete the cookie of the thing, cookie and data. You have an CSRF validation failed because you did not send any kind of CSRF token. Let's do one thing. Let's pass the same CSRF token which we got in the previous request. So let's see what happens then, because we can have, you can see the page has been rendered, but we could not find any kind of information like here you can see the page has some kind of DNS a lot of DNS data, but when you use the same CSRF token, it does not give you any data out of it. So definitely for these kind of validated things, we need to specify the CSRF token. So I will demonstrate how to get these CSRF token and pass it into this. So let me refresh the site. So these, yeah, that's fine. So these CSRF token will be hidden in the source code itself. You need to scrap it and give it in the request. You can see that this is the keyword where you will have a hidden input which name CSRF and the CSRF token. So you need to scrap this token and pass it into the request. Like we have seen, like we need to set the token of CSRF, and inside data you need to mention CSRF middleware token and give the token into it. So for that, as previously those things, what we need to get is like the input with name equal to CSRF middle token and the value within it. Here is the tag. We need name equal to CSRF token and the value which is inside the value tag. So this will give you the CSRF token. Once you get it, you need to set the cookie value with CSRF token equal to that value, and in data value you need to mention CSRF middle token and CSRF value. So once you are done with this, you can run the Python script, and this might be working because we have sent the CSRF token, and you can see the response is 200. Let me print the you can run this module any number of times because it automatically generates the scraps and generates the module. So you can see there are a lot of information now. Like it has scrapped and we got the DNS data out of it. See, so this is how we used to bypass the CSRF. Okay. Here comes the HTML request module where you can use HTML session, which means like when you have a login form with username and password, and you type them and create a session, you can use them. And once you some website used to have, like, even when you create and get request, it will create a session and have a user cookie over there. When you need those kind of thing, you can use session.get of the URL, so you will have a new session over there. You can use those sessions to it will be useful when you have the cookie kind of tricky things. Once you get this, it will have a request, and response.html.find of tag will give you the HTML page tag into it. You will have like these kind of things. It will be similar to Beautiful. Okay, here comes the Cloudflare scrap. This is one of the services around the globe which have best bot detection challenges and tricks to block all kind of bots from the web. So what this Cloudflare does is it will create an web page kind of this, and this will hold 5 seconds in the page. So only browsers can bypass this. Like, you need to send a request and wait for 5 seconds, and then you will be redirected to the actual site with an cookie or the query value. So in Python modules, you cannot, like, these kind of request modules, it will return you the request as soon as the server returns it. But when you try the same on these kind of Cloudflare protected websites, it won't be sending you properly. We had a module called CF Scrap, which was updated till March 23rd, but unfortunately we had an update on April with Cloudflare, and which this module could not work on that time. So I thought I will make it easier with help of Selenium. So here comes the work of Selenium by using it as a headless module. So let me demonstrate what will happen if you use the Python request in CSRF. sorry, the Cloudflare protected thing. So let's try to scrap the ghost project.fr. So you will have the page. You need to wait for 5 seconds until it confirms you are a real person and not bot. Once you are confirmed, it will be redirected to the page actually. Yeah, see, you can see a query with get variable, like some random variable, then value into it. We cannot get these kind of value, but the CF scrap, which was outdated, had these things automated, but now it's not working. Let's grab this URL alone. Okay. Yeah, here you can see it does not leave us to enter into the page. It is still inside the Cloudflare page, but we need the source code of this page. We need to like wait for 5 seconds and get this page, but the Python request model does not like wait for the request, like wait for a time period and then get the request, but Selenium can do that. Let me remove these options. Selenium is a package which is used to automate the browser. Like when you need to type Aravinda into browser, but you need to do like 1,000 times opening, closing, and then moving the cursors. To automate these kind of things, we will be using Selenium. And let me show what the Selenium does actually. Then let's get into the headless module. These headless modules are the browser which does not have any kind of GUI interaction, but these browsers will be acting background as an headless browser. Like it will be backgrounded and it will go through all automated steps. So we have an this is not a headless browser, but this is a Selenium browser. You can find this little robot symbol near my Firefox. That means this browser is automated and it has a Selenium invoked with. So let's close this. We need to. This is a simple kind where you can use WebDriver from Selenium. You need to import it from the Selenium package. Selenium WebDriver you can use Chrome or Firefox, anything. If you do not have those kind of things, you can add executable path. Like you can mention which path does the Firefox actually exist. And driver.get will the browser will get this URL into that thing and it will give you the page. But we need to wait for 5 seconds. That will have like 6 seconds depending on the internet speed and ISP provider. So it will take time. Once it the Selenium browser has popped and see the URL has been automatically entered and it got the Cloudflare page. The internet speed was much faster than my CPU speed, so it returned much more faster way. Just me take it away. Making into a headless browser, you need to enable option called headless options.headless equal to here. Here we got the ghost project actual site, but each and every time we cannot start and stop these. We cannot open and close these kind of browsers. But once we make it into a background process, it will be makes much more easier. You need to provide like options.headless equal to true. Once you make that, you can pass this options into the WebDriver.Firefox. That's how you will automate the browsers in a headless mode. finally we come to a module called Tor, staying anonymous and hiding yourself from actual service when going into dark web. Before getting into Tor, like when you are using Linux or Unix kind of operating system, you will be having, sometimes you will be having Tor built. If not, you need to use you need to install it with help of apt-get. Once you're done, some people will be having it configured already. Let me show it how to configure. You need to get an hash password out of it. So tor.hash password and give your password. It will return you a hash password here. You need to mention this password in the config file of tar, etc/tor.tor/rc. So here you can see those information, and here you need to mention the hash password you got it now, and you need to mention the control port as 9051 and socket port as 9050. Once these are set, you can restart the service, like service or restart, and this will restart the service. Once you're done with those things, you are good to go with using Tor request. I will be showcasing two kinds of Tor requests, like using Tor request module, and another is like using the socket thing. So Tor socket request is an kind of same, but Tor request has an advantage of resetting the identity each and every time. When you run the program n number of time, you will be having n number of different identity, means you will be assigned with different IPs each and every time. So this is a beautiful web page which will say you the IP from which you are requesting. So let me import normal request, and let's see what is my real IP and Tor IP. Okay, here I did not pass any kind of proxies, or this will return my actual IP, and here I have used Tor module, tor.get, so it will be going from Tor and get the things out of it. So let's run and see. Yeah, first it returns, usually Tor takes a bit longer than the usual IP because it need to travel through more nodes. So yeah, here you have a different IP. Let's rerun this to make sure that each and every time we get a different reset identity. We use the password here because we need to stay, like we need to have the admin privileges to reset the identity each and every time. That's why we have passed the password which we have entered. Like we got the request, like you can see the Python request module stays with the same IP address, but you can see the Tor IP has changed each and every time when you run this module. So this is how you will be staying anonymous with different kinds of IP. Even here I can show like Tor IP changes each and every time, but the original IP stays same. Last but not the least, we have the CAPTCHA bypass. We have like Resurrect module is the one of the best for OCR. Get the text out of the image. So you need these modules of the, you need to install these into your Linux system so you can use it handily. Yeah, this is a site for getting your passbook. I guess it's for passbook, and you need to enter those account number and password. But you can see here is an CAPTCHA, which is an additional kind of mathematical tricks. So you need to get this out. You can see this is a simple image with an ID equal to CAPTCHA ID. So you can pass this request and get the image with ID captcha ID. You need the source so you can get the image out of it. But you can see it is an base64 encoded image, so you need to get the source, replace the base64 string as empty, and then remove the new line string. Once you remove those things, you can decode the base64 and replace with an byte stream object, and you can open the image in that and read the string out of the image. Resethacker is the model which we'll be using for getting the text out of the image. Let me run this. It will take a second because you need to get the request, and then see, we got the request of the number. From here it will be simple, like 64 minus 2, you can automate that thing, and you can pass it into like how the request is going. You can add this here and you can get the data after it. So that's how you bypass the captchas when you have text as an image. This model can be used like if you have a long kind of paragraph, you need to type the thing into the text box. You can do the same. Here I have used the Resethacker module, the image, and you get the output. Here you have a bonus for the session. ParseUp is an automated tool where you can use it for like it will be having GUI instead of going for Python, instead of going like these kind of programs. It will be having a GUI version, and just add and click on the items which you need repeatedly. It will automate itself, and it will give you output as an Excel sheet or a JAWS format, JAWS notation, or even if you want like which programming language as an output, you can select and you can export it. I don't recommend of using the ParseUp for a beginner because it's not much helpful, but when you're going to use the data for machine learning or artificial intelligence, and you're going to scrap the site for only once, then you can go with ParseUp and get the data into the JAWS format, so you can train the ML and AI models. So that's it. Thank you guys for supporting and joining the session. I hope it was useful and informative session. Here are some of the mediums where I will be available. If you have any queries, you can text me and ping me. I will be definitely looking into the queries. And before ending the session, I would like to thank RESTCON for accepting my speech, and thank you for the opportunity. That's it. Thank you.
Hello, RESTCON. I'm Alyssa Miller, and today we're talking about DevSecOps. Many of us have heard about DevOps, and we've talked in the security community for many, many years about how do we make it DevSecOps and make sure that security is a part of the DevOps pipeline. So, surprisingly enough, we've not figured out the answers to this yet. So I'm going to show you some strategies today. We'll talk all about some of the difficulties in achieving this, getting adoption with developers, and how we as security folks can do better to make sure that we can bring security and make it part of that pipeline. So let me begin first by introducing myself, because I realize many of you may not know who I am. My name is Alyssa Miller, as I said, and I'm a hacker and a researcher first and foremost. I've been working on computers since I was a small child. I bought my first computer when I was 12 years old, and it's something I've always had a love for. I became a software developer numerous years ago when I first got into the technology world, and I spent a lot of time working in financial services building software before I transitioned into security as a penetration tester. Since that time, I've done a lot of work in application security and so forth, and today I find myself as a security advocate, or an application security advocate specifically, for a company called Sneak. I've also got 12 years as a security leader. A lot of that time spent working in security. I was leading teams, leading programs, vulnerability management for a Fortune 200 financial services organization, and so forth. So this is what I do. This is where I've been my entire life in security. And then finally, I'm also the co-host of a podcast called The Uncommon Journey. So myself, Philip Wiley, who is also speaking at RESTCON this weekend, and Chloe Mastagi together we host this podcast talking to people from around the security industry about their unique stories and how they came to be in the security world. So let's dive in right away. Welcome to DevSecOps. When we talk about DevOps, or more specifically DevSecOps, a lot of times there's some confusion about what this really means. A lot of people right away think about things like CI/CD pipelines, where we've got continuous integration occurring and software's being deployed continuously. And we get focused on the technology and how do we automate it and so forth. But if we go all the way back to 2008, two gentlemen in Belgium wrote a paper describing this idea that they had for something called DevOps. The whole goal of it was, how do we make development easier? How do we make it faster and simpler for developers and operations people to move from the beginning of a development cycle all the way through deployment? How do we set it up so they can work together, so that we don't have these issues of silos between these different parts of the organization? And so when they describe DevOps, what we're really talking about is a culture change. It's building a culture within the organization where technology and processes and people and tooling and governance all come together. They all are responsible. They all have a shared responsibility for making sure that software gets deployed quickly, efficiently, and securely. So we don't want to get mired in all these ideas of having to automate everything, having to have all the tools and all of the processes in place to do that. That so often we get tied up in that when we think about DevSecOps, that we forget the bigger picture. We forget that what we're really trying to focus on here is the culture of the organization and building this culture where everybody is working together for the same goals. Now, this was back in 2008 that this concept was first put into practice. And we've had over a decade now to refine this, so we must be getting better, right? Organizations that are doing DevOps, they must be doing a really good job of building this culture where everybody has that shared responsibility, right? Well, in 2020, my organization did some research. We, among other things, we created a survey that we sent out into the community, the developer community, security community. We talked to everybody from individual engineers all the way up through executives levels of management. And we asked them a lot of different questions about security and how they handle it within their organization. And one of the questions we asked them is, in your organization, who is responsible for the security of your applications and the security of your infrastructure? The results are kind of interesting. So we see 85% say that their developers are responsible for the security of their software. But only 55% of those said that security plays a role in that. And only 35% said that operations has a role in that. Think about this. We're in an environment of DevSecOps where developers, security, operations are all supposed to be working together. And yet we're putting all the weight, it seems, on the development teams. Now, when we get to infrastructure, they level off a little bit more. But I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, because now we've got 63% that say developers are responsible. Well, okay, so maybe the other 37% of those folks have still mostly on-premise infrastructure. But then we look at operations, only 56% are responsible for it. And security team is only 56%. These bars should all be 100%. Everybody should be a part of this. Whether you're a developer, whether you're in security, whether you're in operations. We all have a role to play, both in securing software and securing the infrastructure. So it's alarming when 81% of respondents, or in this case 85%, say that developers should own this. But then we don't see that same level of ownership across the other areas of the organization. So, why is this a problem? Well, let's look at modern day development and what modern day development looks like. So in my day, I told you I was a software developer. If I created a 100,000 line application, that meant I wrote 100,000 lines of code. That's not the case anymore. And as we look at it, here is a very simple Java application. It's 80 lines of code, 3 Java files. Straightforward, as easy as it gets. But one of those files includes my dependencies. And where do these dependencies come from? Well, these dependencies come from the open source market. They're out there on GitHub. They're things that are third-party packages that I'm going to include in my code. Now, if y'all remember back to this little breach that happened with this little organization called Equifax, yeah, that third-party software from the open source community, that thing, Struts libraries, anybody remember that? They caused a big problem. Why is that? What do these dependencies mean for us? My 80 lines of code has 7 dependencies. That means there's 7 packages out there in the open source environment that I'm going to pull in as part of my JavaScript, or excuse me, my Java application. But each of those dependencies has its own dependencies. So my 7 dependencies that I've defined in my code actually introduce another 59 additional dependencies that they have. These are dependencies I might not even know about. And indeed, my 80 lines of code in Java just turned into 713,000 lines of code. Now, it's easy with package managers. I can go look, I can see what some of my dependencies are. It gets harder when I want to understand what those sub-dependencies are. And it gets very difficult to visualize them. So when a vulnerability is discovered in, say, Java struts, like we saw with Equifax, it can be really hard for me to determine what's in my software. And now, we don't know everything that happened with Equifax, and I'm picking on them because they're a very good example to use. There are others in the marketplace. But that breach, we look at the details of that have been published, what little bit we do know, and it seems very likely that much of the issue was this vulnerability was discovered, and Equifax likely had a hard time even figuring out where in their environment that particular library was being used. Because it may not have been something that they defined directly. They may not have had that convenient dependency line that said, hey, we're using this version of struts. So what's in your software? How do you know? The fact of the matter is, this is what developers are dealing with every single day. This is how development happens these days. We have package managers. We don't write thousands of lines of code. We go through, we find packages in the open source world that are going to fill certain functionality needs that we have, and we pull those in. We define those as dependencies in our code, and that just becomes a part of our application. So when it comes to the security team, then how do we know what's there? How do we make sure that we know what software is in our environment? How do we know then when vulnerabilities are discovered in those open source packages where we even have those packages in our environment? Can we tell? Do we have that visibility? We don't know. It's difficult. This is where that shared responsibility is becoming so important. If you don't believe me, take a look at what the security of these open source dependencies looks like. I mentioned I work for a company called Sneak, and I mentioned to you the research we did. So I talked to you already about the survey. Well, some of the other research we did is we looked at where the majority of vulnerabilities that we discover in people's projects, in their software, where are those vulnerabilities coming from in terms of their dependencies? And what you can see here is, especially in certain ecosystems, the majority of their vulnerabilities are coming from those indirect dependencies, those dependencies that they may not even know they have. Now, if I've got anybody out there that's developed in JavaScript and done node development, you know how this goes, right? You open up your node project for the first time and you go and get yourself coffee and maybe lunch. Well, NPM goes out and retrieves all of those dependencies that are in that project. NPM is a great environment. It's a wonderful ecosystem to be working in for so many reasons. There are so many developers collaborating, working together, and providing great code that each other can reuse so they don't have to build that functionality from scratch. On the flip side, it means that NPM has a massive number of indirect dependencies in any given project, and vulnerabilities get introduced into that code from those dependencies they can't even visualize. Ruby gems, Maven, when we're talking Java, they're not much better. We still have that same risk. So when I've got developers out there working in a continuous integration environment where they're constantly doing this development and are pulling this stuff in, how do I, as a security person, make sure that they're accounting for these vulnerabilities that may exist within the application? Vulnerabilities that might exist in dependencies we don't even know that they have. This is the modern day challenge that we face when we talk about DevSecOps, because this is what DevSecOps development is all about. So when I look at this from a security perspective, I have to start thinking, how do I get a handle on those open source dependencies? How do I get a handle on understanding just what is in my software? But it's not just development that's an issue. What about my operations folks? Our operations environments are changing drastically. And I love this quote from Kelsey Hightower. So you want to roll an application platform. You want to create this infrastructure on which your application or your microservice or something is going to run. Yeah, all you need to know is you need to know Linux, Docker, Kubernetes. You see this laundry list of things that are all the different technologies that play into a modern day operational environment. Who's managing this? Who has this knowledge? Well, with things like containers now, a lot of times we're talking to the developers again. We're asking developers to define their own containers, to build Docker files that grab a base image, build upon it, run the code that they need to run, execute commands that fire up their microservice, and get it going and create that container in our production environment. Who's supporting that? Who's analyzing that from a security perspective? We're launching it with things like Kubernetes. We've got Kubernetes out there handling all that orchestration. Who's configuring that? What configuration options are being set? Who's looking at those and making sure they're secure? Who's checking out our Helm charts? Are we reviewing those? Are we making sure that we don't have containers that are running with root privileges? Are we limiting things like CPU and memory so that we don't have a particular container that runs away and denies resources to the rest of our environment? How often is that responsibility put on the developers or maybe the operations folks? How do we as security in a CI/CD environment or even just your traditional DevOps environment, how do we make sure that we can plug into that? We try all the time. We talk about DevSecOps. We say, oh, we're going to get in there. We have all these experts who know all of this, all these security ideas, all these security concepts, these best practices for how we set up those environments. But how do we make sure that those practices are actually being adopted? As I said, we put it on the developers. When we get into DevSecOps, we expect more and more to have those developers taking control and being responsible for this. You saw it in the survey for yourself. So we've tried to make it easier for developers. Docker Hub exists. It's a thing if you haven't heard of it before. I hope you have. Docker Hub's a great thing. We have all of these official containers out there in Docker Hub. So when my developer wants to go and they want to build a new container for their Node application, they can go out to Docker Hub, they can get the Node container image, and then they can build that as their base image. And from there, they set up their Docker file, they execute their commands. Great. Well, that's an official image. It should be secure, right? Well, not so much. In our research, we looked at the security of those Docker images, the official images listed in Docker Hub. Now you can see over the last 2 years we looked at these, and last year it was already concerning. This year, it didn't get any better. So when I ran this report for 2019, I looked at that node image in particular. Now for each one of these, I just grabbed the latest, right? I grabbed the node latest tag. It pulled it down. It was Node Buster version 14 something, I think 14.3. And we see 642 vulnerabilities in that image. Now imagine your developer just created a Docker file that's going to run that image and execute commands within that image in your production environment. Who within your organization is looking to see if those Docker images are secure? There's 15 critical vulnerabilities in amongst those 642 vulnerabilities. Now, that node image being so far out there makes the rest look like it's no big deal. But don't lose sight of these other numbers. 78 vulnerabilities in Postgres, 66 in HTTPD. If I'm going to run a Mongo database, I've got 55. Ubuntu is the only one who looks like they really got significantly better. And what we find here is that there are easy steps that can be taken to secure these, to make them far more secure. Those 642 vulnerabilities become 42 if I change from node latest to a node slim buster image. So just by shrinking the size of my image, I use a different base image and I get more secure. But who within our organization is doing that? As security folks, we're asking developers to do that. We're trying to figure out how do we get those security practices into our DevOps pipeline so that we can secure these images. Do you trust that your developers are actually doing this? Are you giving your developers tools to make this happen? If you're not, how can you be sure that any of this is occurring and that you're not ending up with these images that are listed as official images in Docker, which comes with its own implied trust? How do we make sure that they're not ending up in our production environment? Well, that's what we have a security team for, right? All of this stuff, security's there, security is going to make things better, security's focused on our development pipeline, and security is going to help those developers. We're going to train developers, we're going to make them more security aware, and we're going to work with the operations teams to make sure that every piece of infrastructure, whether it's a container or a physical server going into the environment, is more secure, right? That's why we have security for. I mean, this is all that security is responsible for. That's not much. I'm sure they're totally focused on application security all the time, right? Security folks are just as overwhelmed as developers and our infrastructure people. So when we start thinking about DevOps, we can't rely on any one specific team to make sure that our software is secure. This is why that culture in DevSecOps, where we're expecting everybody to work together toward a common responsibility to make our software efficient, stable, and secure. That's why it's so critical. Because we've all got so much to focus on. Technology is changing every day. Security is plugged into every piece of new technology that we bring into our environments. Infrastructure is changing every day as we introduce things like infrastructure as code and containers and orchestration. Development is constantly changing as these ecosystems grow and change, and new languages, new ecosystems become a part of the everyday developer's world. Technology doesn't get less dynamic. It just continues to grow and change and expand and become more and more a part of our world. And we, within our organizations, as part of a DevSecOps culture, we need to be working with a shared responsibility for making that happen. So when we look at DevSecOps, this is what we're talking about. Today's pipeline has these phases. You've probably all heard about this a million times. You've no doubt seen the infinity diagram that I've got up here. We have code. It begins in a backlog. Starts off as a simple user story. Developers take those stories, they make it part of a sprint. That sprint results in code being created. That code gets committed to a repository. Once it's in the repository, we build that code. We test that code. Then it's going to be deployed and it's going to be monitored. And we loop through and we do that all over again. That is the modern day DevSecOps pipeline. Great. So what do we do about securing this? What's going on that makes today so difficult in DevSecOps? Well, first of all, we've got these conflicting motions. Security is trying to push left. Security's been trying to push left for the 20 years that I've been in the technology space. We've been preaching the idea of push left. Let's get earlier. Let's do security earlier in the development pipeline. It's cheaper. It's more efficient. It's better if we can identify vulnerabilities in our software early on. We've all heard the mantra, I'm sure. But as technology continues to grow, we've got developers pushing further and further right in the pipeline. As we do things like infrastructure as code, as we create containers, developers have more and more responsibility farther right because their code is what is being deployed in that environment. They are writing the environment. They're creating the environment into which their applications are going to run. Now, because infrastructure and containers, all these things in the operational world are being created as code, we've got the operations folks pushing their way up the stack. They can no longer just focus on hardware and operating systems. They need to be aware of the security implications of these containers and how can they limit containers to still support what the application needs, but not introduce all these new vulnerabilities because we're using a massive container that introduces all sorts of vulnerable libraries like we saw with the node container image. And then finally, you've got business pushing down into the stack in a way that they never have before. Right? We had these business folks, they would write some requirements and we'd have architects who would translate those requirements into design and from design we'd move into development, and that was that traditional waterfall approach. We don't do that in DevOps. We ask the business now to drive the work that we're going to do. We ask the business to create those user stories. We take those user stories and they become part of our sprint. We go off on a sprint. We do our thing as developers. We create this stuff and it rolls and it flows and it goes into production. Business is pushing down deeper and deeper. They have a more integral role in what we're doing in the development pipeline. So when I start thinking about how I bring security into this DevSecOps world, I have to be aware of these oftentimes conflicting motions. Everybody's moving in a different direction. So what do I do from a security perspective? I've been to a lot of talks. I've been to a lot of talks from security professionals talking about how do we create DevSecOps? How do we get security involved? And inevitably, all too often, I hear a lot of the same story. This idea that at each one of these points where I move from one phase of the DevOps pipeline to the next, where I go from backlog to coding and committing, where I go from my code's committed to it's getting tested, in each one of these, I hear security people talking about how we have to put a gate in place. We have to stop development and we have to look at and analyze what they've created and make sure that it's secure. And then we flow that back. If they didn't create it securely enough, we have to make them work over again. They commit their code. We run a SAS tool. We take a look at it. Oh, too many vulnerabilities. Got to go back and recode that. This model doesn't work when we're talking DevOps. This is the model that breaks DevOps. This is the model that ultimately will cause development teams to circumvent our security controls or simply just not adopt them at all. We have to start to do this different. We have to focus on this idea of frictionless enablement. And by frictionless enablement, what I mean is we eliminate those gates. We take out those long feedback cycles. And now our security initiatives become a integral part of those phases. We're no longer between the phases. We are part of each of those development phases. We need to enable our developers. We need to give them the tools, the capabilities to execute these security practices within each phase, not make security practices a separate part of the pipeline that stands in the way of moving from one phase of the pipeline to the next. So threat modeling is no longer that thing we do after stuff ends up on the backlog. How do we get ahead of this? How do we create SCA or SBOMs using our software composition analysis tools as we're coding and committing code? How do we build SAST and DAST into our build and deployment cycles? How do we make sure that container security is happening and being looked at when we're deploying? How do we make sure that monitoring and pen testing happen inside that final phase when things are in production? We need to start thinking differently. One example I will throw your way is one of my favorite, and that's this idea of threat modeling. I'm sure a lot of you out there probably never do threat modeling in your development pipelines. When I bring up the idea of threat modeling, indeed, I get a lot of developers who tell me that you can't threat model in DevOps because threat modeling breaks it. It's too heavy, it's too long, it takes too long, you have to create all these diagrams. You see all the methodologies and things up here. You see things like Stride and Dread, these different frameworks that we use to describe our threat models. You see DFDs being drawn in the upper left there. We're going to map out this entire system where all the data flows and all these trust boundaries exist and so forth. And then I'm going to use this CAPAC taxonomy to describe the threats. This doesn't work. This idea that I'm going to get a bunch of people in a room and do this threat model, and it's going to, we're going to sit down for days and model out this whole system and identify all these threats and create all these security controls from that and specify all that for our developers. It doesn't work. We need to think about this differently. So instead of having this threat model as that barrier, that gate that stands between when I put something into the backlog and when it starts getting coded, how do I build threat modeling into my backlog? Well, what if those business people who are writing my user stories, what if we had them within each user story construct a threat model? Tell me what the threat model is for that functionality that's being described by that specific user story that you created. We're no longer threat modeling the whole system. Forget about that. Think differently. How can we add the other CI to our CI/CD? And by the other CI, I mean continuous improvement. Instead of thinking we're going to boil the ocean and threat model our entire system all at once, how can I break it down into a bite-sized chunk that I do as part of my user story and just focus on getting incrementally better tomorrow than I am today? That's what we want to do as security people. So now I can train my business folks in how to write a basic threat model. I don't need them to analyze Stride and all that. I can do this much more simply. They understand what crucial functionality is there. They understand how that crucial functionality could be abused. So how do I train them and make them an enabled and responsible party in my DevSecOps pipeline? That's what we need to be thinking about differently. This is just one example. And indeed, I can do this all the way along. What this does for me is it starts to have very positive effects on my development team. Because what I want to ultimately do for my development team is move away from those gate models where I created all this noise and all this fatigue. How many of you have ever run a SAST tool? And you know what happens. You run SAST analysis, you get a laundry list of vulnerabilities back. That's a lot of noise and a lot of fatigue that gets created, and it does no good. So how can I take my activities that I've now enabled the developers, the business people, the ops people, how can I take those practices and show them how that is going to make their lives better? So let's take my threat modeling example again. We have my business people. They're creating these abuse stories. Why do I do threat modeling? Well, I do threat modeling because I'm trying to explain to developers, here are the things you have to be most worried about. Here's the things that could break, could go wrong, that would be most critical to us as a business. These are the security issues we're worried about. I don't care if it's spoofing, if it's tampering, all those things that are in stride. I don't care about that. Tell me in plain English, this is what I'm worried about in this application. These are the things that could go badly that create a threat for the business. Have my business people write those abuse stories. They feed into our development team and they inform our developers, here's how you need to design your security controls. Here's how you can prioritize these elements within your security or within your development pipeline as you're building your sprints. Here's this information. We've told you what risks are most crucial. So now as I'm planning my sprint and I'm taking user stories, it's easy to plug that in. I now, as a developer, have a simple understanding direct from my user story that's been assigned to me as part of this sprint. I can see clearly, without going through a big long design phase, because that doesn't work in DevOps, I can see how to design those security controls that are going to address this plain English threat that I need to address. It's plain language. I can understand it. I can articulate it. It makes sense. It's not written in some archaic security terms that only the security people know about. That's what's crucial here. And then this flows on. I take that same information now, and that's what's going to help me build my unit test cases in my CI/CD pipeline. So what we see here is now that noise and fatigue, that's a basically, here's a bunch of vulnerabilities you have to fix. You have to stop everything you're doing, go back and fix all this stuff. Now we see, and we've demonstrated for all of those folks, the developers, the business people, the ops people, who are engaged in our DevOps pipeline, our DevSecOps pipeline, they now see how that one security activity makes every subsequent phase of the pipeline easier to execute. It's no longer a mystery anymore. This is what we're trying to do as we implement security practices inside the phases of our DevSecOps pipeline, because this is what is going to help our business people, our developers, our operations folks accept and adopt these responsibilities that we want them to take on. But it doesn't stop there. I mentioned culture. Culture is so crucial whenever we are talking about DevSecOps. So how do we build this culture and make sure that everybody's working together? Well, here's 3 simple ways you can do it. It starts with the idea of walking a mile in their shoes. Building empathy. Setting up programs where I've got developers shadowing security folks and vice versa. I've got operations shadowing security and developers and so on. Everybody gets to understand what it is that the other is doing. This builds the empathy where now I, as a developer, I understand what security's concerns are. I see how my actions impact their workload. And I start to think about it differently. That whole security team that used to be that silo just over there, the people that I didn't like working with because they were always the people that said no, they're now suddenly humanized to me. I understand that they're people too, and I want to work with them. So creating these programs within my organization where we do this type of shadowing is crucial. And then from there, we build this idea of mutual engagement. How many of you as security individuals are ever involved in a morning stand-up? How many of you are involved in sprint planning? Does operations come to sprint plans? Or do you have separate deployment meetings? How do you bring these people together? Shouldn't your sprint planning include business, security, development, and operations? Shouldn't we all be talking about the prioritization of these various user stories that are in our backlog? What should be most important in this upcoming sprint? What are the implications from a security perspective? What are the implications from an ops perspective? So that security and ops knows what's happening and they can be prepared for what's going to be coming at the end of the pipeline. Start to build this mutual engagement where everybody's working together. It fosters that sense of a shared responsibility. It makes this happen. And then finally, pave the road. I talked before about frictionless enablement, where if I as security am going to introduce a new tool or a new practice, it needs to be something where my development teams, my ops teams, my business folks can adopt that without it creating new friction in their environment. I'm not creating those gates anymore. Instead, I'm creating a path where I've given them tooling and I've enabled them to do these practices in such a way that it's actually easier for them to get from backlog to deployment if they follow the right path that we've set out, rather than making it that, well, boy, it'd be easier if I just bypass all the security stuff. So looking at how we can build security practices in a way that increases the efficiency. That goes back to all that noise and getting rid of all of that and making things smoother. And it comes down to making sure that when we pick tools, we think about, is it something the developer will use? How do we implement it in a way that they can? How do we make sure that we've given them all the capabilities? We've enabled them. And now we can just trust them. We make them accountable. They understand that, hey, it is on you to make sure that this is secure. And if security vulnerabilities show up in your code, you are the one that's accountable for it because we've given you the tools and we've enabled you. We've not stood in your way. So now we are trusting you to be a part of the security posture of our organization. That's what we're trying to do here. So when I start thinking about tooling, how do I make this paved road happen? How do I make it so that it's the easiest road forward? I need to meet the developers with where they live. For those that are developers out there, you recognize, no doubt, many of these logos. Security folks, you probably recognize some of them too. Maybe a lot of them. How do we make sure that our tooling fits into those areas where they're already working? We don't want to add more circles to this diagram. We want our security tooling to fit right into these circles. Tools that integrate into the IDEs. Tools that support the various different ecosystems that they're working in. Processes that fit into their continuous integration environment. So if they're using CI/CD, they're using Jenkins, how do we make sure that we have a build process that executes the security practices we want so that the developers don't have to be consumed with that effort? This is how you make this work. So notice I've gotten all the way to the end before I've talked about tooling and automation. We get so heavily focused on how are we going to tool, how are we going to automate, how are we going to make CI/CD flow. Yes, it's an important, crucial piece, but it's only one piece. But it does need to be there. So as we think from a security perspective, we are part of that automation. We need to plug into the existing tools. So as you're evaluating that next security purchase, does it tie into your container environment? Is it integrated in the code repository? Does it fit in your CI/CD management? That's what's important from a security perspective. So I'm just about to wrap up here. I'm almost out of time, but I want to leave you with this quote. This quote is from Henry Ford. Coming together is the beginning. That's where a lot of us are at today. Keeping it together is making progress. But it's when we're working together that we'll be successful. That's the goal of DevSecOps. And from a security perspective, we need to be actively engaged in that working together. We can't work against them by setting up gates, by creating long feedback cycles, by going off with our own tools and things that are specific to security, by using terminology and processes that only security people understand. We all have to work together, whether we're business, whether we're developers, whether we're operations, whether we're security. We all have the same responsibility. We all have the same goal. It's to make our business successful, to deliver software that our users want, that's secure, and we want to deliver it efficiently and make it stable. That's what we're doing here. That's what DevSecOps is all about. This is how you do it. So with that, I want to invite all of you, please continue the conversation. You have my social media information up here. You can see my LinkedIn, Twitter, my website. I'm always happy to speak with anybody, share ideas. It's what I do. It's why I do this. I love to share my ideas. I love to hear your ideas. And I love to have us challenge each other. See how we all can get better. So please feel free to reach out. Twitter is by far the easiest. If you're looking for more of a professional bent, then yeah, use LinkedIn. And be sure to check out my website. My blog, I blog once in a while. It's not as active as most, but you'll definitely see my other speaking engagements listed out there as well, and some other materials for you additionally to take a look at. So thank you so much. I really, really do appreciate being able to be a part of RESTCON. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference. A big thank you to RESTCON for having me. A big thank you to my employer, Sneak, for making it possible for me to be with you folks today. And with that, thank all of you for attending, for watching, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
hope you all gained a lot of valuable information, a lot of value from all those speakers who presented their session today. I hope you all gained some kind of experience too from listening to all those speakers, to listening to their thought process. I hope this session on this conference was valuable for you. We kept it for 3.5 hours because we do not want you to take it for long 6 to 7 hours of conference. We made it like a movie. But I hope this was one of those best conferences you have ever attended. Now, I would like to thank all of the audience who attended this session and made our day one, the bug hunting day, so much successful as it is right now. I would like to thank Resethacker team's core team member and all the members out there who gave their so much of time, who gave a lot of their skills into making this session successful. I would like to thank all the community partners and all the sponsors who made this event possible. I would like to thank everybody of you out there to make RESTCON this month successful. I would wait for all of you on day 2 too. Okay, day 2 is Researchers Day, so I hope you will all attend the day 2 session. We have a lot of speakers coming on day 2, so I will be waiting for you all to join on day 2, Researcher Day of RESTCON. See you tomorrow at 6 p.m. onwards. And for a lot of you who are looking for all the details and updates regarding this conference, you can follow us on every social media platform out there, especially on Instagram. It's @Resethacker, and you can follow us there and you will get all the updates out there. If you are not following, you are missing out on a lot of valuable information. So do follow us there, do subscribe this channel, and you will get all the updates of a Resethacker and a lot of value when you follow us or subscribe us and connect with us on social media platforms. This is my assurance as okay. So this is your host signing off from day 1. I hope to see you tomorrow. Okay, so have a good day and take care.